All right, guys. Hello. In this video, we're going to be talking about 5 questions that all kind of revolve around sampling and frequency. So the questions I'm going over in this video are, and again, my numbers are different than yours, but there's one about the corn grown on different farms. There's one about carpooling among employees, and there's a frequency chart on that one. There's one about flights, and it's based off of a segmented bar chart, sorry. And then there's one about opinions on building a new high school football stadium. And the last one we'll do, there's one about a grocery store that's putting organic fruit out and how like they're able to buy it, whether it's front or back of the store. So the first one, like I said, is one about the corn. This is a really good question in my opinion. It's a little bit confusing, but a really good question. So it says, one county has 1,000 farms. They know that corn is grown on 100 of these farms, but not on the rest. And in order to estimate the total farm acreage of the corn for the for the whole country, two plans are proposed. So it's a little bit concerning that they use just a certain county to determine the whole country, but that's okay. They don't actually approach that at all in these plans, so we're going to ignore it. If they did approach it, then we could talk about it. So our first plan, they're going to sample 20 farms at random. So they've got their 1,000 farms in a pool. Here's their pool. There's 1,000 farms, and they just choose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They choose 20 of them. Okay. So some of them have corn, some of them don't. They're going to take those and estimate the mean average corn per farm. So they'll say, hey, farm A, how much corn do you grow? You grow none, so you got 0. Farm B, you grow 20 acres. Great, we got 20. And obviously they're going to find the average of all those farms. Then they're going to multiply, they're going to find the confidence interval, which is good because we're not in a census, so we want to use the confidence interval. And they're going to multiply both ends of the interval by 1,000. That makes sense. So it's kind of weird, but it makes sense because once we found this average of all of our farms, what if we got an average of 20? Okay, so we found that our farms grow an average of 20 acres of corn. Well, there's 1,000 farms, so we're going to have to multiply that by 1,000, if I can write, to find the estimate because they want the total farm acreage. And I have a feeling they want this to say county, but I'm not going to say that for sure. Now that I'm kind of thinking more about it. But so there's our plan. Not bad. Everything makes sense. Nothing is mathematically wrong about it. But I would be concerned that in those 20 farms that you randomly sample, you're going to get farms who don't grow corn at all. They already told us that. So I would be concerned that that's going to decrease our mean, our average. And then when we multiply by 1,000, our number is going to increase because we're multiplying by 1,000. That makes sense. Why? Because we already explained it. But I would just be concerned because if you looked at maybe your plot of how much corn is grown, you'd have a lot down here at 0. There'd be a whole lot of farms down here at 0. And then maybe, I don't know what the average corn growth is, but 100 to 500, you'd have a lot over here too. So you've got this big gap in here, and your average is going to fall in that gap when you're surveying or you're sampling all of your farms. The second plan says that they are going to identify the 100 corn growing farms, which sounds a little bit better already. They're going to sample 20 of them. So you've got all the farms. They identified the 100 that grow corn, and then they're going to sample within here all 20 of them, or they're going to find 20 of them within here to sample. They're going to estimate the average with the confidence interval. Then they're going to multiply by 100. Well, why are they multiplying by 100? Well, because there's only 100 farms that actually grow corn. So when they find the average, let's say now the average is 50, they multiply by that by 100. Well, that makes sense because these other farms, they don't grow corn at all. So if we multiply by 100, we can find the total farm acreage of corn that is grown in this county. So we're liking this one better because the average amount of corn grown is a little bit more representative. And then it says, on the basis of information given, which of the following is a better method for estimating the total farm acreage? Again, we're thinking plan 2 is better, which honestly, I'm pretty sure the answers are straightforward. Says 1/2, don't do that. It says 2/1, yes. Letter B, that's looking good so far. So A is already out. It says choose either plan since both are good and will produce equivalent results. They will not produce equivalent results. So even if you're not sure which one is better, they're not going to be equivalent results because of what we talked about. Choose neither plan since neither estimates the total farm acreage of corn. They would both be estimates of the total farm acreage of corn. 2 is better, but each of them would actually work to give us an estimate. And then E says the plans cannot be evaluated from the information given. Well, we just sat here for 5 minutes and evaluated them. So E is also out. So B is going to be your correct answer for this question. Okay, the next question we're going to look at is the one about there's a company that's trying to see carpooling with their employees. And basically, we're looking at this frequency chart down here, which is very convenient. We like frequency charts. Be careful, like the totals are on the outsides of these frequency charts. A couple of things really quick. I realize that there's no multiple choice on your LS AP exam, but hopefully going through these questions is a good way to remind you of all of the concepts. And they could easily give you a frequency chart and ask you to do things with it and find estimates and all that kind of stuff. So I still think these are relevant questions for us to study from. It goes through, and obviously we kind of scan all of our answers first. So letter A says if a person owns a car, they're more likely to live elsewhere in the city. If a person does not own a car, they're more likely. If a person is more likely to own a car, person's more likely to live in a downtown area, person's more likely, more likely, more likely. So we're trying to see basically what does this chart show. So if we find the proportions, we know what is more likely and what's less likely. If it was multiple choice, be smart, because some answers make logically more sense. So if my company is in downtown Chicago and someone else lives in downtown Chicago, they could easily get to work without a car. If they live even somewhere else in the city, they could easily get to work without a car. But if they live outside the city, it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to get to work without a car. So if we look between A, B, and C, A says if a person owns a car, they're more likely to live elsewhere in the city than to live in the downtown area. That makes sense. That's believable. Letter B says if a person does not own a car, they're more likely to live outside the city. That doesn't make sense based on the information I know in life. Letter C says a person is more likely to own a car if he or she lives in the city. Again, based on what I know in life, that doesn't make as much sense. I'm not saying that couldn't be the right answer. We need to do the math. But if I'm doing math and I'm time crunched, I'm looking at letter A first. Letter D and E says a person is more likely to live in the downtown area in the city than elsewhere. That's easy to find. That's not. I have to do a lot less math for D and E. E says a person is more likely to own a car than to not own a car. So I would check A, I would check D, and I would check E. Sorry, A, D, and E first before I check the other two. And you're trying to see which one is true. So if you're time crunched, you find one that's true and you move on. But we're going to go through all of them because we can. So it says if the person owns a car, he or she is more likely to live elsewhere in the city than to live downtown. So if they own a car, that's your given statement. So your given part is if they own a car, then they're more likely to live elsewhere. So you want, based on your chart, if they own a car, well, total car ownership is 60. That's why I have a 60 down here. And living elsewhere is there's 15 of them, so I got 15 over 60, which is 0.25, so a fourth of them. Then I have if they own a car, they're more likely to live downtown. So again, owning a car is 60 of them. Living downtown, there's 10. So we're doing 10 over 60, which is 0.17. So this is a true statement. Again, if I'm time crunch, I'm marking A and I'm moving on. We're not in this moment. So letter B says if a person does not own a car, he or she is more likely to live outside the city than to live in the city, downtown or elsewhere. So again, the given is no car. So no car, there's 140 of them. So that's why I've got 140s on the bottom. Living outside the city, there are 25 of them. So I'm doing 25 over 140, which is 0.18. Downtown, and elsewhere in the city, we're doing 60 plus 55. I got to combine these two, so that's why I got 60 plus 55 on the top here. Okay. Letter C, Person's more likely more likely to own a car if they live in the city, downtown, or elsewhere than if they live outside the city. So again, your given part is now downtown and elsewhere. So that's why I've got 70 over 70, or sorry, 70 plus 70 on the bottom, because here are my totals. And owning a car out of those would be 10 and 15. Sorry, this is kind of crazy up here, 10 and 15, which equals 0.18. Let me get rid of a little bit of this for us. Yeah. We can see a little better here. Okay. And then if I'm given that they live outside the city, and I want to know how likely they are to own a car, again, outside the city, there's 60 total, and owning a car, there's 35. So that would give me 35 over 60, which is 0.58. Okay. Again, these two are not, if you compare the numbers, they're not true statements. So mathematically, B and C are also out. D and E, very simple math. The probability of downtown, okay, so out of your total is 200. Downtown, there's 70 of them, so 70 out of 200. Elsewhere is 70 out of 200. They're equal, not more likely. And letter E says a person more likely to own a car than not. So owning a car is, owning a car is 60 out of 200, and no car is 140 out of 200. So pretty simple math there. So we're just checking, seeing which one's right. So letter A is the only actual true statement in this whole thing. All right, our next question is the one about flights, and they give us a segmented bar chart. I have no idea out of the two questions what they're going to give you, the two FRQ questions on the AP exam, but I would know, be familiar, don't be surprised, don't be shocked, don't be confused if you see a segmented bar chart or some kind of bar chart that you've got to analyze, or at least some kind of chart you got to analyze. So if it's segmented, they're stacking them one on top of the other. So be careful, just because these look even does not necessarily mean that they're even proportions, because it's out of the whole amount. So after I glanced through the answers, A, B, C, D, E, I went through and I just kind of made my proportions, because I knew that it was asking about percentages and comparing them. So I said, okay, for R, there's about 150 total, and I know that about 100 of them have on-time flights, so 67% or 0.67666 repeating, are on time, and 33%, a third of them, are delayed. Then this looks 50-50, but I've got 100 out of 200, which is 50% are on time, 100 out of 200, 50% are delayed. And then in airport T, the total looks like it's about 500. So 200 out of 500, 40% are on time, and 300 out of 500, 60% are delayed. So then I go through the answers. It says airport T has the greatest percentage of on-time flights. 60% are on time. Here, that's delayed. Whoops. 40% are on time, 50% are on time, 67%. So airport T definitely does not have the highest. Letter B says airport R has the least percentage of on-time flights. Again, that's comparing the same thing. They actually have the highest percentage, so A and B are out. Letter C says the number of on-time flights at airport S is half the number of on-time flights at airport T. So on-time flights at airport S, we said there's 100, which is right here. And at airport T, there's 200. So yeah, absolutely. 100 is half of 200. So C is looking good right now. Letter D says the number of on-time flights at airport R, which is 100, is less than number of on-time flights at airport S. They both have 100. 100 here, 100 here. So they're actually equal. So D is also out. Then the last one, E, says the number of flights at airport T, which is 500, is equal to the total number of flights at R and S. Well, the total number of flights is 150 plus 200, which is not equal to 500. So letter E is also out. So that leaves letter C to be our correct answer on this one. All right, our next question is one about, they're trying to figure out if people residents in a city want to support building a new high school football stadium. They hire a polling firm to conduct a survey and request a sample of 500 residents to be selected using a stratified sampling design. So when we're doing stratified sampling design, as soon as you see one of those vocab words, think about what it means. So down here, I've kind of explained it. Your strata are groups of individuals in a population who share characteristics. So I want to split up. So I want to say, okay, maybe I have all females in one group, all males in another group. Maybe I have elderly versus young. Maybe I have parents versus non-parents. In this, maybe I have high school student parents versus parents of non-high school students. Maybe I have just parents in general versus non-parents. Maybe I've got athlete parents versus non-athlete parents. So we're making groups that are split based on something that they have in common. So within our strata, we had your strata themselves are different from each other. So I have 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever separate groups. So this group has things that they have something in common, and this group has things that they have something in common. So maybe this is our male, this is our female, etc. Okay. And it says which of the following methods will achieve the desired sampling design. So letter A says send a survey to all residents and use the first 500. That's a voluntary response survey. That is not stratified sampling. Letter B says select a random sample from each voting district based on the population of city residents in the district so that there is a total of 500 obtained. So if I split up based on voting districts, so I've got whatever, District 1 and District 2, maybe we're thinking, hey, in this district, we've got maybe some wealthier houses. In this district, we have less wealthy. Maybe this district is closer to where they'd be building the football stadium. Maybe this district is further. So that would be strata because all of those people have something in common. They're in District 1, they're in District 2. Letter C says select one voting district at random and then select a random sample of 500 from the selected voting district. This is cluster sampling. So if we have cluster sampling, we're trying to say, hey, voting district 1 and 2, they're probably, District 1 has a representative of all people in that area, in that city. District 2 has a representative of all people in that area, in that city. So we're just going to easily pull one cluster and sample them. So cluster sampling is saying, hey, our clusters, each cluster is similar to each other. So we have got people that look like this, people that look like this, and people that look like this. Same here, people that look like this. It's hard to make the same shapes twice. So our strata are similar to each other. Here, if we've got, or I'm sorry, our clusters are similar to each other. If we've got strata, our clusters are not similar to, or our strata, gosh, I'm sorry, our strata are not similar. So these guys all have one trait, these guys all have another trait or characteristic. So this is cluster sampling, not stratified sampling. And these words I'm using, cluster and stratified, are only in relation or in regards to sampling. When we talk about experimenting, it's totally different words, so kind of keep that in mind. Letter B says alphabetize a list of all city residents, and then select the first 500. Classifying those selected by voting district. This is kind of weird. I don't like this answer. You're choosing based on the name, so that's systematic random sampling. And you're just recording their voting districts, so that doesn't make sense to me. So B is out, and again, even if it doesn't have this weird end about classifying those selected by voting districts, this is still systematic sampling, which is not what they wanted. Letter E says like the first 500 city residents that attend the next football game. This is convenient sampling. Obviously, it'd be very biased if you're serving the people that are attending the football game about whether we should build a new football stadium. So letter B would definitely be the correct answer for this one. All right, our last question of this video is for me, number 17. It's the one, there's a food store and they're doing a study to see if putting their organic fruit at the front of the store versus the back of the store, if they're going to do a better job at selling it. So and our study is kind of important. It says at the beginning of the week, of each week, the organic fruit display was randomly assigned to either the front or the back of the store, and sales for the week were recorded. At the end of the 12 months, the owner determined that the average weekly sales of organic fruit displayed at the front of the store was greater than the average weekly sales of the organic fruit displayed at the back of the store. The difference was just statistically significant and what can be concluded from the study. So just kind of going through, letter A says sales of organic fruit generally increased over the 12 months. It has nothing to do with increasing or decreasing. It just says at the front of the store it's better, at the back of the store it's not as good. And they've randomly assigned it each week. So we know that we're going to get some weeks at the end of the 12-month period where it's at the front, and some weeks at the end of the 12-month period where it's at the back. So they've, if we're concerned about it increasing over the 12 months, they've taken that into account with their random assignment. Letter B says shoppers will buy more organic fruit each day if they see it when it first appears or when they first enter the store. So that may be true. But we don't know that based on our study because they're looking weekly. So their average weekly sales is what they're looking at. So if we're looking at average weekly sales, we can't talk about each day. So if that said each week, sure, but we got to say or I'm sorry, if it said each week, we're good, but it says each day, so we can't go with letter B. We just said letter A was also wrong. Letter C says any conclusion is problematic because the different types of fruit were not taken into account as part of the study. Sure, that might have been better to help our study out, but again, they just want to look out of it investigating whether displaying organic fruit. So we're just saying in general, so it's fine that our study is just fruit in general. Letter D says placing the display at the front instead of the back of the store causes, be careful, think about that hard before you circle it, an increase on average of weekly sales of the organic fruit. So we like the word average, we like the word weekly. Can we say cause? Okay, well, we said earlier, I think it's in this video, that we can only say cause and effect if we have an experiment with random assignment. Well, we do have an experiment with random assignment, so we're good with cause and effect. I'm okay with saying that, make sure you double check it. Letter E says weekly sales of the organic fruit will always be greater than when the fruit is displayed at the front rather than the back. It's very strong to say always greater. It's too direct, too specific, too guaranteed. We already said letter D is a much better answer anyway. And we did average weekly sales in over a 12-month period. So we can't say it's always, that it's always going to be greater. So letter E is out. That leaves letter D to be the correct answer for this one. That's all the questions for this video. Obviously, there's going to be more videos with other questions in them, but if you have more questions that didn't get answered, please email me, remind message me, let me know what you need help on, and I will do my best to help you out.